Welcome to On the Sidelines, the show that discusses sports and how sports intersects our lives. I'm your host, Paul McGrath, and I'm glad that you can join us for this show. Well, it's springtime here in New England, and as was written by Alfred Lord Tennyson, in the spring, a young man's fancy, or may I add anyone's fancy, lightly turns to thoughts of baseball. What else? I am pleased to have as our guest a man who has spent his life connected to sports, both as a fan and in his professional life. He had an 18-year career as a sports writer and then started writing songs about baseball, which led to a career in which he performs a musical baseball show. So as we start to get our bats and gloves for the start of our baseball season, at whatever level we may enjoy the game, let's welcome to On the Sidelines, Howie Newman. Howie, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. A pleasure to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. Let's go back. Who is Howie Newman? How did he get here? What's going? Give us a little background of you, Howie, before we get into the songs and baseball and what we're going to do here.
Well, actually, I've been a songwriter for a long time, and I tend to write things about songs about everyday life. And for me, baseball is everyday life because I've been a huge fan since I was like 10 years old. And the writing the songs actually led to my sports writing career because I put out a CD of baseball. Actually, it wasn't a CD at that time. It was a vinyl record of baseball songs, and I was advertising it in this thing called Sports Collector's Digest, which is no longer in existence because the internet, replaced it. But somebody saw that, and he was really desperate for a local sports writer, so he contacted me, and I started writing sports, and that's how I got involved in sports writing. Within a few years of that, I was covering the Red Sox and covering the World Series, and the rest is history, I guess.
Well, I think, though, Howie, to do full disclosure, you're not a native Bostonian. Should we tell people where your native
I grew up in New York.
Yeah.
I grew up in New York and came to go to Northeastern University and graduated from Northeastern, and I've been here ever since. So I've been here a long time, but I won't tell you exactly how many years it is.
No, I won't ask that question. So did you start sports writing right after graduating from Northeastern, or how did we get into that?
No, I didn't actually. Like I said, I didn't get into sports writing until I had launched my music career. So I was probably about late 20s, probably about 30 when I first started sports writing. And I actually started writing the first newspaper, legitimate newspaper, was the Metro West Daily News, or the Middlesex News as it was at the time. Did that come to Westboro?
It was. Westboro has that,
yeah. So that's where I started covering American Legion baseball games for $12 a game.
Wow.
And I was so good at it that they got me up to 15 within a few months. So
wow.
But it was fun to do it, and I loved covering baseball, and it kind of grew from there.
But your resume also says you covered World Series and Stanley Cup Finals. I mean,
that's correct. Yes.
How did we get into that? Which newspapers were we covering for?
I was working for the Lynn Item in mid '80s, and there was a pitcher from Peabody named John Tudor.
Oh, right, left-handed pitcher.
Everybody remembers him, pitched for the Red Sox, and they went over to the Cardinals, had some unbelievable years for the Cardinals. And so they sent me out to St. Louis and Kansas City in 1985 to cover the World Series. That was pretty exciting. It was almost a storybook ending because Tudor pitched. He had already won 2 games in the series, and he was pitching the 7th game with a chance to win the series for the Cardinals. And he got knocked out like in the 2nd or 3rd inning, and the Cardinals lost 11-0, and it was kind of a disaster. But he was very cordial and very cooperative with me during the series. I appreciated that, and that was fun to do. It's the first time I ever covered the World Series, and I didn't have a laptop then either, so I had to drive to the Associated Press office in St. Louis and Kansas City and filed my stories in the middle of the night there. So, but that was quite an experience. I really enjoyed that. And then in 1986, it was the Red Sox and the Mets. So, I could drive to New York, and I covered all 7 games of that series. That was sort of the pinnacle of my sports writing career, I think, to do that. And of course, the Red Sox lost, but it was exciting to be able to do that.
So, Howie, let me ask you then, 1986, Boston Red Sox, New York Mets, and it's the 9th inning, and we know what happened with Bill Buckner. Where were you? Were you going down to the clubhouse? Were you watching the game?
I was watching.
I was
watching it. Back in the old days of newspapers, they had morning papers and afternoon papers, and Lynn Item at the time was an afternoon paper, so we had plenty of time to write our stories and watch the game, etc. Whereas a lot of the people who had real tight deadlines had to get down to the clubhouse. So I was sitting in the left field press area. Remember that very distinctly when the ball rolled through Buckner's legs. I was writing down every single pitch to Mookie Wilson from Bob Stanley. And I remember it was 10 pitches. It was on the 10th pitch that he hit the roller down the first base line. And of course, the rest is history.
Well, the rest is history. They had a chance the 7th game, so it wasn't over, but it was over, I guess.
They were ahead in that game too. They had a 3-0 lead, but and Bruce Hurst was pitching, and he had already won 2 games in the series, and he was pitching on short rest, and he kind of ran out of gas, and it was an unfortunate ending for the Red Sox. But we kind of forget that now almost because they've won 4 times.
Oh yeah,
in recent history.
Well, I think we've put that in the rearview mirror somehow, and
right.
And younger people like my grandsons, they don't know any better. It's like, well, we win all the time around here.
That's right, yeah. But 86 years, the Red Sox found ways to lose, and.
Now, did you get to go in the clubhouse after Game 7, or you were just filing?
I did, yeah.
You did?
I did. And it was. Let me just tell you, I went into the clubhouse after Game 6 also, and what was striking to me, I went to the Mets clubhouse first and then the Red Sox, and the Mets were very quiet. I mean, they just, kind of pulled a rabbit out of a hat, and they knew that the series wasn't over yet, but they weren't celebrating or anything like that. But 7th game, I went, and it was very sad thing. I remember talking to Dwight Evans, and he just said, we had it, we had it within our grasp, and we just let it get away. So it was kind of sad. But and over my experience of covering all types of sports, I think talking to the losers is a lot of times a lot more interesting and illuminating than talking to the winners. It's easy to be a winner, but it's hard to be a gracious loser sometimes.
Well, I suppose you don't have to worry about getting champagne in your eyes either.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Never had to worry about that.
That was quite an experience, though. And that 6th game, was a really exciting game. I mean, it didn't turn out the way everybody had hoped it would, but there were a lot of exciting moments even prior to the big rally in the 10th inning for the Red Sox, for the Mets.
Yeah. Now, what Stanley Cup final did you cover? Because I'm into hockey.
I covered the Bruins against the Edmonton Oilers.
So you were there into 1 o'clock in the morning for Game 1 in 1990?
I covered the one that where they had triple overtime and a power failure.
Yeah, well, that was
on the ice at the old Garden. I did cover that one.
So what did you do when they had the power failure?
Had the power failure, so I had to I took the public transportation into the Garden. I had to bum a ride home. Everything closed down, but I somebody gave me a ride, so that was good. But that was quite an experience, and I actually got to touch the Stanley Cup because the Oilers won the Stanley Cup in Boston.
That's correct. Yeah.
And in the old Garden, that visiting clubhouse was so small. They had the Stanley Cup in the middle there, and I just could walk right up and touch it. So it's got my fingerprints on it somewhere.
Well, you have some pretty good memories from being a sports writer. Let's go on to your new career or profession here, writing songs. You said you started writing songs at an early age. How early is early?
Well, I didn't at an early age.
Yeah.
I actually didn't start doing music professionally. I didn't even start playing the guitar till I came to college.
Yeah.
So, and I started writing songs then, but they weren't very good. But I would say in the early 70s, I started writing songs, and I just kind of gravitated towards writing baseball songs, although most of the songs I write are not about baseball. But I did write a few, and then I put out this a record of baseball songs in 1979. Was my first baseball record, and it had one of the songs on that was called "Wait Until Next Year." It was kind of inspired by the 1978 Red Sox, who had a big lead on the Yankees and then frittered it all away and had that one-game tiebreaker. But so. Yeah, and so I've been writing songs since 1973, I guess, was my earliest. And I'm still writing songs, and the sports writing and the songwriting kind of overlapped, I guess. Once I started writing sports about 1980 or so.
Right.
And, as I said before, the songwriting actually led me into the sports writing. I had never even thought about being a sports writer, even though I was such a big fan.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start. We're going to show we're going to play a song called "Trades." We'll go over some memories because people have memories on trades. But how did you? What prompted you to write the song "Trades" and talk about certain cities? You don't want to be traded.
Well, the song was about Tug McGraw. It was called "Traded."
Yeah, traded.
And I was a big Tug McGraw fan. I think actually he's still my favorite all-time player because he had so much enthusiasm and he had such a great sense of humor and he was kind of wacky and he wasn't afraid to show it. I remember in the 1980 World Series, he was pitching for the Phillies and he came on with a couple of guys on base. He was a late inning reliever, and I forget who it was. He had a long fly ball to the outfield and caught it and ended the inning. And he goes off the stage and walks off the mound and he's patting his heart so he was kind of great. But he was like probably my favorite ball player of all time. And he was traded from the Phillies, from the Mets to the Phillies during the 1974 offseason. So I kind of wrote that song. A lot of it was also kind of inspired by the Jim Bouton book, Ball 4.
Right, yeah.
Which was, a lot of people were pretty outraged by what he said, but in that book he kind of explained the kind of human side of baseball, how it affects people, and like a trade really affects you. You have to uproot your whole family and find new housing and all this other stuff. So that was kind of it. And so I wrote the song, and I actually sent it to Tug McGraw. These were the old days when players were a little more responsive to things like that. And I sent him a copy of the lyrics, and I asked him to autograph it and send it back to me. I gave him a self-addressed envelope. And I don't know if you got the photo last night. I do have it here.
We're going to show that, Howie. As a matter of fact,
yeah.
what we're going
I have that framed and hang it on my wall, and it's a real memento. And it was back in the days when ball players were really less up on their high horse and more responsive to. There it is, right there.
Yeah. So we're going to play the song "Traded."
Okay.
We're going to show some trades, and we're going to. I'm going to give you some memories that I have, because people sometimes remember, especially if you're a big baseball fan, who got traded, why got traded, was it a favorite player of yours, and we'll talk about that. And we're going to talk about why you picked on Baltimore, Cleveland, and Philadelphia. So, Aiden, if we can play the song and show some of the trades, and then we'll go back and talk about some of the players, some of the trades.
Sure.
Traded, my uniform's hardly faded. Wish I could have made it, staying right here. Clean out my closet, get my security deposit. Go and drown my sorrows in a mug of beer. I'd love to come to Boston and play for Mr. Yorkie. Montreal's real nice, and I'd even take Milwaukee. But 6 months in Philly, it's not what I bargained for. But I guess it could have been worse. It could have been Cleveland or Baltimore. And now I'm traded, my uniform's hardly faded. Wish I could have made it, staying right here. Clean out my closet and get my security deposit. Go and drown my sorrows in a mug of beer. When your arm goes bad, ain't nothing you can do. When your fastball ain't fast and your screwball won't screw. I'd love to come to Boston and play for Mr. Yorkie. Montreal's real nice, and I'd even take Milwaukee. But 6 months in Philly, it's not what I bargained for. But I guess it could have been worse. It could have been Cleveland or Baltimore. It could have been worse. It could have been Pittsburgh or Arlington. Could have been worse, it could have been Houston or Bloomington. It could have been worse, it could have been worse, it could have been worse. It could have been worse.
Well, there we have it. We have traded. I have to ask you, Howie, I want to go back into the trades and talk about some memories
Sure.
I have on the trades and the players, but why did you pick on Baltimore, Philly, and Cleveland? That just come into the lyrics?
I don't know, it just kind of fit in. But, at that time, Baltimore was not, didn't have the new ballpark, and it was kind of, not highly regarded as a destination where you would want to go.
Yeah.
And neither was Cleveland, and Cleveland didn't have their having its new ballpark at that time either. So, but actually, I just put in a few random cities in there. A lot of it is just poetic license. You can put in whatever you like.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we're going to go back to the first trade here, if we can back it up, Aiden. And we're not going to go back to the trades of Babe Ruth and the Red Sox, but I thought we'd do some of the ones that had to do with Philadelphia, Cleveland, or Baltimore.
Okay.
So here we have Dick Stewart went to Philadelphia from the Red Sox, and we had a left-handed pitcher by the name of Dennis Bennett. Now, Dick Stewart played for the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1960 when they won the World Series.
Right.
He came here to Boston, only played 1963, 1964, but in those 2 years, and I was in high school then, and he hit 77 home runs.
Yeah,
But-
he was a prolific
Right.
home run hitter, but they called him Dr. Strangeglove because he wasn't.
Well, you're right.
Wasn't the greatest fielder of all time, which actually, to me, this type of thing, like a lot of people say, well, he could just be a DH, but I think that takes a lot of the interesting aspects of baseball where you have to be a two-way player, and you have a guy who can hit and can hit home runs. You got to find a place to put him. But now you have the easy out with the DH. But yeah, he was a terror at first base.
Well,
now I don't remember too much about Bennett, what kind of success he had with the Red Sox, but
Not much. That's why you don't remember. But Dick Stewart hit, as I said, 77 home runs, but he would commit in those 2 years 53 errors. So he had almost as many errors as he had hits. I remember in high school going down to Fenway. One of my buddies worked locally. We had a group of grocery stores called Iandoli's. Had one in Westboro, had one in Shrewsbury. He worked in Shrewsbury. We rode down on a Saturday afternoon. It had been raining, so we waited. and the rain stopped, and out comes Dick Stewart, and he started throwing baseballs in the stands. So everybody loves Stu. You know, he hit the home runs, he threw baseballs. Later on in life, I had a client who had a subsidiary in Philly. And they said, Paul, you'll love this story. I said, what's the story? He says, well, we hired someone to go collect some of our bad debts. And the guy they hired was Dick Stewart. That's the story they told me. I believe it. So
the guys, they had to get off-season jobs. They weren't making, $20 million a year.
Yeah. So he was in Philly. He passed away in 2002, the same year as Ted Williams. He was out in California. Yeah. So let's go on to the next one, Aiden, if we can. See what we have here. We're going to go down to Cleveland. And one of the favorite popular players, again, for the Red Sox was Ken Harrelson. And Ken's there on the left. And he and a fellow by the name of Dick Ellsworth, he's a left-handed pitcher there. And they were traded for Juan Pizarro, who was a left-handed pitcher, Joe Askew, who was a catcher, and they called him, for some reason, the immortal Joe Askew. And there we have Sonny Siebert. I think Sonny Siebert and Ken Harrelson were the key players in that trade. And then if we can pull up, Aiden, the picture at Fenway, this was right after the trade. Trade was on April 19th. And this was Patriots Day. I was at Fenway, and I took this picture, and everyone loved the Hawk. And you can see it says, no Hawk, no pennant. And no kidding, it didn't happen. But
no, it didn't happen.
But the memory I have is Mary Beth and I, my wife, were at Pleasant Valley watching some golfers putt. And my wife is elbowing me and hitting me, and I'm thinking, what is wrong? And I looked next to me, and who's standing next to me but the Hawk? And by the time they had putted out, the Hawk was gone.
He was a great golfer. Wasn't he considering playing on the tour at some point?
I think he was. He was a very good golfer, a very good athlete. And, of course, then he was with the Red Sox in 1967. When Tony C was beamed, they got the Hawk to play right field. So those are some of the memories I have. I don't know if you have any comments.
Well, I remember one game Sonny Siebert pitched for the Red Sox. I forget what year it was, but he was pitching against Vida Blue.
Right.
And it was a big hype, big crowd, because Vida Blue was having a great year at Sonny Siebert. I think they both might have been undefeated or one loss or something. It was a big crowd. Everybody was anticipating it. And the Red Sox blew him out. Yeah. And Siebert had a no-hitter going to the ninth inning. And I never saw a guy lose a no-hitter so quickly. I mean, he gave up like single, double, single home run or something, and then he was out. But he had some good years for the Red Sox, though. That's the thing I remember about Sonny Siebert.
Right, and then poor the Hawk, I think he broke his leg sliding into second base with Cleveland. He was not the same, but he was certainly popular. And for people our age at that time to trade the Hawk, we were up in arms. So you remember those. Okay, let's try another one here. And again, this is going to be one with Cleveland. And we have, going to Cleveland from Boston, up on the left there, a young third baseman by the name of Ted Cox. They had a young catcher by the name of Bo Diaz, the second person. Mike Paxton was a pitcher. And Rick Wise, another pitcher who was with the Red Sox in '75 for the World Series. And they were traded for Fred Kendall. And for now, the young people think of Dennis Eckersley as a announcer, but the Eck was a pretty good pitcher. He came to Boston.
Oh, he's excellent. He's a Hall of Famer. He was not only a great starting pitcher who won 20 games, but he saved a lot of games too. And what was interesting? I don't know if you're going to bring this up later. You had a picture of Eckersley and Buckner who were traded for each other.
Yep.
And the ironic part of that is that two of the most disastrous occurrences in World Series history involved Eckersley and Buckner.
Right.
Because when Eckersley gave up the home run to the Tigers that time.
Kurt Gibson,
no, to the Dodgers
at that time, yeah.
It was the Dodgers. And Buckner, of course, had the ball roll through his legs. So two of the most momentous
Yeah.
sort of tragedies in World Series history involved Dennis Eckersley and Bill Buckner, and they were traded for each other.
And that's who we have next to bring up, because sometimes it's fun. You say, okay, who was traded for who, and you can keep going and going and going on the links for different players being traded. And as you say, the Eck had lost a little bit off of his fastball at that time as a starting pitcher. I don't think Chicago, he went to the Cubs with a guy named Mike Brumley for Billy Buck, who we all remember. Billy Buck was a tremendous player. In my estimation, in 1986, he had those high tops. I mean, he was running in agony and in pain. I think Billy Buck did more to help the Red Sox than hurt them. Unfortunately, they left him in on the sixth game there. But the Eck went to Chicago, didn't fare too well. But then, as you said, he was a tremendous relief pitcher with Oakland in the World Series, etc.
Well, he kind of turned his life around. I think at that point he had some issues with alcohol, and he was struggling, and I think he remarried at that point and kind of turned himself around and became an unbelievable relief pitcher, which is what got him into the Hall of Fame. I mean, the combination of being an excellent starting pitcher and an excellent relief pitcher got him into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he would have 390 saves, 320 with Oakland. So those were his major ones. But again, the link between Eckersley and Buckner, and you can go on. But for our younger people now that know Dennis Eckersley as an announcer, he was a very good pitcher, both for the Red Sox.
Well, that's why he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he's there for a reason. Okay, let's go on next. What are we doing next here? We've got, again, Baltimore here. So we have Curt Schilling, and Curt is there on the left. Those are pictures I took. Game 2 of the World Series. And that was the last game that Schilling would pitch for the Red Sox. There he is walking out to the bullpen.
I was actually at that game.
Yeah, there he is walking out. There you can see Colorado, the World Series game 2, and there he is for the.
He pitched like I think 5 1/3 that day. I mean, that was near the end of his career.
Well, it was. And, it was his last game. Yeah.
Yeah, and usually in the postseason he was good for at least 7, 8 innings. He was a terrific performer in the postseason, no question about that.
Right. So
he did not have a great resume for the regular season. I mean, he had some really good years for Arizona, for the Red Sox, but over his whole career, I think he had 216 wins, which is kind of borderline Hall of Fame, and plus a lot of the controversy around his, political persona kind of turned off a lot of the voters. But in the postseason, he was money, 11-2.
Yeah, that bloody sock is somewhere, and there he is, a picture from when he actually was with the Orioles, and the Red Sox. And he really never panned out with the Orioles. It would be later on in his career. And then Brady Anderson, again, nobody knew who Brady was, but he was an excellent ball player with the Orioles. But the Red Sox in return got Mike Boddicker, who really helped them on.
Yeah, he did. He was a good pitcher, very good pitcher.
Yeah, they made
borderline Hall of Famer.
Right. He helped them in '80. That trade was made in May of '88, and he helped them get to the playoffs in '88. They wouldn't make it. But anyway, that's another trade in the links. Let's go on to another one. This is an easy one. 1-for-1. Very good relief pitcher on the left, Andrew Miller. The Red Sox would ship him to a fellow that nobody knew about, Eduardo Rodriguez. And there he is in an Oriole uniform. Unfortunately, it won't be a Red Sox uniform this year. But that was a trade that I think worked out for both teams.
Yeah, it did work out for both teams. Miller was a dominating relief pitcher, but a lot of the trades get made that way. You scout out the other team's farm system and try to take one of their better prospects, and you give them something that's established in return, and you take a chance that the young ball player is going to come through, and he did. Had some great years for the Red Sox. It'll be interesting to see how he does this year for the Tigers. Because he didn't really pitch, he missed the entire year with COVID and then had a heart problem to boot, and then didn't really have a great year last year. So it'd be interesting to see how he does.
All right, let's try a more current one here, the last one we have. And we have going to Philadelphia, Heath Hembry and Brandon Workman, 2 pitchers for the Red Sox. And we received 2 pitchers in return, Nick Pivetta and Connor Siebold. And Connor's up and coming, and Pivetta really, I don't think anyone thought Pivetta would do as well as he did for the Red Sox.
He did very well.
So
I mean, that worked out for the Red Sox pretty well. I actually got him back, and then they released him again. So, but and Siebold is an up-and-coming pitcher, young pitcher, and Red Sox weren't going anywhere that year, and so they took a shot at that, and it worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah, and one more. We're just going to do a link, if we can show the next one there. And there it is. Nick Pivetta went to Philadelphia from Washington, and Washington received Jonathan Papelbon, a Red Sox. So there's links in some of these trades.
But I was looking up some trades last night too. The biggest heist of all time, I think, was Heathcliff Slocum. The Red Sox traded Heathcliff Slocum to Seattle for Jason Varitek and Derek Lowe.
Right.
And that was pretty. But you know, I think the trades were more interesting before free agency. Right. And not that I think free agency is a bad thing or the players shouldn't have the right to determine their own, after a while in the major leagues to determine where they want to play. But some of the big blockbuster trades, like Frank Robinson for Milt Pappas or Sparky Lyle for Danny Cater, Rocky Colavito for Harvey Keene.
Yep.
The Mets traded Nolan Ryan for Jim Fregosi.
Yeah.
So those trades. Lou Brock for Ernie Broglio.
Yeah.
And John Smoltz for Doyle Alexander. That was a trade similar to the one we just looked at with Philadelphia, where Smoltz was just a minor leaguer at the time, and Alexander was an established starting pitcher, and it worked out pretty well for the Braves, I would say.
Yeah, and Lex, as we threw this in, if we could get Tug McGraw, and there's Tug. And he was tremendous with the New York Mets. He would help them in '69, but then they, as you said, they traded him in 1974 to Philly, and it helped them to the World Series. I guess the only connection, Howie, if I have a connection to Tug McGraw, is on Paul McGrath, McGrath. And my guess is that his great-grandfather, when he came over to the United States, said, hey, I'm going to be the great-grandfather of Tug McGrath. And they forgot the TH and put the W in. So I'm going to claim relationship to Tug. You agree? So there's Tug, but if we can show again, we've shown this. This is, I think, a great piece of memorabilia. And
I love it. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. And sadly, Tug McGraw passed away at a young age. He was 59, but just a great competitor, very entertaining baseball player. Wish we had more like him.
So how do you sit down here are the lyrics? Do you sit down and kind of write your lyrics and then try to put a tune to it? What's your Otis opera?
Well, I think everybody has a different modus operandi for writing songs. I don't really have any technical musical background in terms of knowing the mechanics, but I always start with an idea and a couple of lines. It always starts with a couple lines. So for this one was traded, my uniform's hardly faded. And I was just kind of thinking of how sad it is to know that you got traded. And so I write that down and write a few more words and then try to figure out how it's going to sound. I throw a couple of chords around, and it's a very sort of holistic way to do it. And it just kind of evolved that way. And once this song is kind of unusual because it has one chorus, one verse, and one bridge, as opposed to verses and then chorus. So, but I just do it kind of a organic way, and I've written about 100 songs, and it seems to work for me. So and I don't really have any technical musical background. I don't actually write the notes down or anything. So when I write a song, I record it so that I'll remember it for the next time, and then I just write it down on paper, and that's how that one evolved.
Well, you do a great job. Well, there we are. We're traded. So that song evoked many memories for me, and I'm sure other people remember the trades. And I think you're correct. The free agency has minimized some of the trades because
Oh,
those
definitely.
players
I mean, you don't
aren't
have these big most of the trades nowadays are you're trading someone who's going to free agency or that you don't want to re-sign and getting 75 cents back on your dollar
Yep.
in prospects. It just doesn't really happen. The big trades, Frank Robinson for Milt Pappas, that kind of deal, or Sparky Lyle and Danny Cater. That was another one involving the Red Sox that
We'll get to that.
didn't quite work out for the Red Sox and really helped the Yankees.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's switch gears here a little bit. We're going to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and I've been in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but I had to pay to get in. It looks like you didn't have to pay to get in. We have here a picture.
When I visited there several times.
Yeah.
I had to pay to get in, but
Well, here's one.
My bumper sticker is in there with my name below it,
Yeah, looking.
and
There you are. Dump the DH. I guess that's in the Hall of Fame.
yeah, it is. And that was from a campaign that I did in 1985
Yep.
called Dump the DH. And at the time, Peter Ueberroth was the commissioner of baseball, and at that point, the DH had been around for 12 years. And he wanted to find out whether the fans wanted to keep the DH or get rid of it, or how they felt about it, or should we put it in the National League? Sadly, that's going to happen. Looks like it's going to happen. But I printed up these bumper stickers and I put together a brochure of statistics and things like that, and sent it out to radio stations and TV and magazines and newspapers. And it was kind of the 1985 version of going viral. It was, obviously before the internet, but it just went nuts. I mean, I think it was a very passionate, people had very passionate views about it, either pro or con. And it was written up in the New York Times, and it got written up in Sports Illustrated. And when it appeared in Sports Illustrated, that was kind of a big turning point for the campaign, because I was selling the bumper stickers and the brochure for a couple of bucks to finance the campaign, because everything had to be done by mail. And Sports Illustrated in 1985 had like 4 million subscribers all over the world. So once it appeared in Sports Illustrated, and I think I sent you a photo with it. I started getting mail from all over the world. It was pretty amazing. It was like New Zealand and Australia and Europe and Mexico and Canada, and it was just amazing. And I did like 30 radio shows, talk radio shows. I was on in San Francisco one night for like 3 hours, and just had a lot of fun with it. I did a local television show with Johnny Most, and then I did one national one on TNT, and I had a lot of fun with it. Unfortunately, it didn't do anything, but I enjoyed doing the radio shows and the TV and interviews. A lot of newspapers ran it. The New York Times ran it. LA, Los Angeles Herald, a lot of big daily papers. Milwaukee, the Boston Herald ran a piece on it. So it was pretty exciting to do. I mean, I'd never really done anything like that before. And now to find out that my bumper sticker is in the Hall of Fame, that's pretty cool. It's been in there since.
We have a picture of you here. If we can bring that up, Aiden, and there you go. Dump the DH.
That's the picture that ran in Sports Illustrated.
There you go. Well, the old. I'm for the DH, Howie. So I looked up a couple of statistics in my favor. I think Dennis Eckersley, who we talked about, Hall of Fame pitcher. He got the bat 181 times, got 24 hits. So his batting average was 133. And when I was growing up, there was a guy named Hank Aguirre, batted 388 times, got 33 hits, and his average was .085. And I remember a cartoon of him holding a bat that had 3 holes in the bat. It's like, don't even come up. But I went.
Definitely pitchers who can't hit.
Oh, I went and looked. I wanted to try to support you. And I looked up Earl Wilson. If people remember Earl Wilson with the Red Sox in the 60s, he was a tremendous hitter, or we thought. He hit 35 home runs between his time with the Red Sox and the Tigers, but his batting average was 195.
That's not bad for a pitcher, though.
Not bad for a pitcher, but again, do I want to watch Hank Aguirre come up? So we have some pictures here of the DHs, who I think, there's Orlando Cepeda, Hall of Famer, picture I took of Orlando in 1974, and he was the Red Sox first DH. And I think he did a tremendous job. What else do we have here, Aiden? And there's Tony Oliva, who will be in the Hall of Fame, inducted this year. He batted for 277 as a DH the last 3 or 4 years of his career. So it really prolonged his career. But he was a tremendous hitter. We have a couple of him. Next one, there he is batting. This was an old timers game. And of course, the big one I have here, there's Big Papi.
Right.
Now, this was not voting for Big Papi to be in the Hall of Fame. This was a game I was at. I don't know what they were voting for Big Papi. Maybe it was an all-star game, but these kids were all duded up for Big Papi. And there he is. He'll be in the Hall of Fame. So would you rather watch Big Papi hit, or would you rather watch a pitcher hit?
I think it's not. It's kind of an apples to oranges thing. It's not an either or. Basically, the way I feel is that I think the strategy of the game becomes infinitely more interesting when you have the pitcher batting in the lineup. Because when you want to, first of all, there are a lot of pitchers who can hit, and it's become a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point. Because pitchers aren't expected to hit. They start the DH, in I don't know if they do it in Little League, but they do it in high school, American Legion, and college. So the pitchers aren't expected to hit, so it's sort of become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The pitchers don't even put any effort into hitting.
You're right.
I remember hearing Jim Cott on a TV show. He said that when they went to spring training, they would practice sliding because it might help them sometime in the game. So there are a lot of good hitting pitchers, and they're not getting a chance to hit. Madison Bumgarner, and the most famous of all, obviously, was Babe Ruth. And if they had the DH back when he was playing in the early 1900s, then what would have happened to baseball? Because they didn't know he could hit if he wasn't going to be allowed to hit. So I think the strategy of baseball becomes more interesting when you have the pitcher in the lineup, because if you're going to make a pitching change, then you have to see, well, who's coming up? Who do I have to pinch hit? When is the pitcher coming up in the lineup? And all those things come into play. It's a much more difficult managerial decision. Plus, you also have the defensive strategy of, well, I have this guy, and he can't really field that well, so I have to find a place to play him. And so, instead of just saying, well, he can just be the DH and doesn't have to field, because baseball historically has been a game where you have all-around skills. So I don't think it's a question of saying, well, Big Papi is hitting and against the pitcher hitting. It's sort of like, well, what does the game look like when you don't have that automatic batter coming up, that you have to strategize in the late innings. You have to figure out what your defense is going to be if someone is a good hitter and a weak defensive hitter. And can your pitcher hit? Can your pitcher bunt? And I think if pitchers put more effort into it, they could do it. John Lester, when he batted sporadically with the Red Sox, he went over 34. And then he went to Oakland, and he was another 0-2. So he never got a hit while he was in the American League. And he actually, within a couple of years, turned himself into a halfway decent hitter, and because he pitched for the Cubs, and hit 4 home runs and had 10 doubles and knocked in some runs. So I think it's possible if the pitchers have to hit, they will hit a little bit better. But I think it's gone the other direction, where pitchers are saying, well, I'm not expected to hit. I could hurt myself. So I'm not going to hit. So, but I do understand that it does provide more offense with the DH. But I think overall it becomes a less interesting game, because you have that wild card of the pitcher. Can the pitcher hit? Can the pitcher bunt? Can the pitcher run?
Well, I agree on that. I think the one reason I would say let the pitcher bat, though, is because they really don't. It's kind of an automatic out. It would help move the game along. I think the games are too long. This here, I think, would shorten the game up a little bit.
Yeah, we would shorten the game up, but that's another issue entirely.
Oh, God,
really.
yeah. All right, well,
They,
let's switch from baseball. We're going to go over, you said you write other songs, and we did a show a little back when on football fight songs and different college and pros that have football fight songs, and lo and behold, we found, we're going to play it right now, that you wrote a football fight song. Aiden, if we can bring that
That's
up
correct.
and show it, just a little bit snippet here and get into how this happened. So let's
Sure.
take a peek here at Mustang Mania. Here we go.
We don't care what the schedule says, we're gonna go right out and bust some heads. Scouting reports are sure to attest we got the toughest darn team in the whole Southwest. We're the SMU Mustang men, we're gonna win some games, but we won't say when. Our greatest heights are yet to be known. We got all the coaches worried, even our own. It's a Mustang Mania, it's going around all over town. Old SMU starting to roll.
Okay, how did we ever get to be doing Mustang Mania for a college or university in the state of Texas?
Yeah, well, I actually, prior to that, the Dump the DH thing article in Sports Illustrated, in 1978, I wrote to Sports Illustrated, and I told them I'd written a bunch of baseball songs, and they did a story, like in the scorecard section, a short story about my baseball music. And there was a guy in Dallas who worked at SMU, Brad Thomas, and he saw the article, and he wanted sort of an offbeat, kind of outside the box football fight song. And so he contacted me, and this was like July of 1978, and he said, well, I'd like you to write a song and record a song for us, and I had never really done anything like that, writing a song to order. And but he said, well, I'll give you $1,500. I said, all right, I think I can do it. So
at least I know your price now, yeah.
I wrote it in like a day and a half, and I kept it simple. And it's interesting that a lot of times when you're songwriting, you keep it simple, and it works out much better than trying to be fancy with it. And so we're going to Dallas, Texas, so it has to be like a country and western theme. So we got some studio musicians together, a fiddle player and an electric guitar player and piano, and ran into the studio, recorded this song, and there's no like MP3s back in those days, so I had to actually make it into a 45 RPM single. So, and that was kind of an involved process, but we recorded the song, we shipped it out, and got I got 1,200 copies made. I shipped 1,000 down to Texas. They had it by opening day in September, and they played it at the Cotton Bowl before every home game. So that was a pretty unusual and exciting thing.
So how, you said you don't write music, or really you kind of do the tune. How do if you don't write music, how do the musicians get to do the backup and,
Yeah, a lot of musicians work that way too.
They do, yeah.
Well, I give them the chords. I give them the chords and the melody, and and I say, this is what I want it to sound like. I want a country and western fiddle solo here. I want a twangy electric guitar. I want honky-tonk piano, and they don't. Almost all the musicians. Actually, all the recording I've ever done, I've never given them charts or anything like that. I just say, here's the song, listen to it.
Here we go.
This is what I want it to sound like, and if a good studio musician will be able to do that.
So Howie, if you think I can find one of these on eBay?
One of the
45?
Mustang Mania. It's you can actually buy an MP3 of Mustang Mania. On like Amazon or iTunes or those kinds of things. And it's on I put it on my first album also. So if you go to my website, which is howienewman.com.
Well, that's an easy one to remember. Howie Newman, we got your name.com.
Or just Google Howie Newman. Newman. And you can buy any of those songs. And I've sold a few of the MP3s. Actually, SMU was supposed to come to Boston this past year. They were supposed to play a bowl game at Fenway Park, but it got canceled because of the pandemic.
So we would have had Mustang Mania in Boston.
Yeah, we would have had that. Yeah, it would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, that would have been great. All right, well, let's go to another one here. We're going to play a little clip, and you're going to have to explain about Mike Hessman. But let's take a peek here if we can bring this up.
If you mention Mike Hessman, that name might not ring a bell, but he's a legend in his own right with a grand story to tell. He hit more home runs than any minor leaguer ever did. It took dedication, heart and soul, and a ton of grit. He just kept playing cause he loved it, living out his dream, playing baseball for a living ever since he was 18.
All right, well, Mike Hessman was basically a minor leaguer. He would play 109 games in the majors, 2,094 in the minors, and 104 in the foreign league. So he played 2,307 games between 1996 and 2015. How did we get involved with Mike Hessman, who I'm sure I never heard of, and maybe many of our viewers have never heard of Mike Hessman?
That's why the song is important. People should hear about him. But I think I read about it in Sports Illustrated, because he set the all-time record for most home runs in the minor leagues, which is kind of a double-edged sword, kind of a dubious record, because he spent his whole career basically in the minor leagues. And I thought it was kind of interesting, the way that he played for all these different teams, and he stuck with it and hit all those home runs. He actually played for 16 teams in 20 years, and there were 3 seasons in which he played for 4 different teams. So he was kind of a baseball nomad. They called him the real-life Crash Davis. And I thought it was just kind of an interesting story. So I did some research and came up with some stuff and wrote the song. And I sent him a copy of the song. That's a picture of me with him. He retired after the 2015 season. He retired after he broke the record by 1, which I think he played that last season just to set the record. Yeah. And he became a hitting coach in the minor leagues. And he was working for the Erie Seawolves in 2018, and they had a doubleheader up in Portland, Maine. So I called the team and arranged a meeting with him. And it was kind of interesting because the press pass that I used to get into the ballpark said singer-songwriter on it rather than an affiliation with a newspaper. But so I got to meet him. I took the photo, obviously. I got him to autograph my lyrics and talked to him for a while. And very gracious, very friendly, and he has no regrets about his baseball career. He loved doing it. He loved playing, and he doesn't mind. He actually made it to the major leagues. He had 14 major league home runs.
Right.
And so I wrote the song, and actually that's the song that I use to I do a musical baseball show, and I kick off the show with that song. I think it's kind of interesting bit of kind of Americana, It's like here's a guy, toiled in the minor leagues for 20 years, played in Venezuela and Mexico and Japan and everything, and just loved the game and stuck with it for all those years.
Well, I think that, we have here, Worcester now has the Woo Sox, and I think, if you need to see a professional game with very good players at a lower cost, and maybe these will be the fellas you'll be seeing this year, see minor league. And this was a picture I took. You kind of hit a chord with me. I took this picture in 1990, a fellow by the name of Rick Lancelotti. And he would play 1,772 games between 1997 and 1990, and he would hit 328 home runs. He was one of the big home run hitters in the minor leagues at that particular time. And he played 36 games in the major leagues. But that kind of is, Mike Hessman, to me, I said, I remember a guy that hit a lot of home runs, many home runs in the minor leagues, and it was Rick Lancelotti. He was born in Providence, grew up in New Jersey, living in upstate New York. But those guys, there's nothing wrong with a minor league baseball game or any baseball game. Baseball is still the game.
I'm a big proponent of minor league baseball. I've been to a lot of the parks. I've been to all the parks in New England, and a lot of them are all over the country. And it's great. The tickets are reasonable. The parking's reasonable. The stadiums are small. You always have a good seat. And I've covered a lot of, I've done a lot of stories about minor league baseball. And I think it's fascinating talking to some of these kids who are working their way up.
Yeah.
Actually, my favorite baseball story of all time was back in the early 80s. I was sent down to Pawtucket to do a story on this minor league hotshot called Steve Lyons. Yes. And he was very fast. He's a very interesting guy and very effervescent and kind of funny and a little bit wacky. And he was, but back then there was no internet. You didn't know anything about this guy. I drove down there. I didn't even know what he looked like, really. And I sat and talked with him for like 45 minutes. And he was just fascinating. It was a very interesting story. And the interesting part about his career is he was like a non-scholarship college ball player. He hit like 250 in college, 250 in the minor leagues, and 250 in the major leagues, And he just, he was never spectacular on any level, but he just had a very successful career.
Well, let's finish up here on baseball. Big rivalry, needless to say, the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. And there's been trades between the Red Sox and Yankees. Of course, we remember Babe Ruth way back when. But then there's been some Red Sox that have gone to the Yankees on their own volition. It's like, how can you leave us? And we're going to talk about, you wrote a song, why'd you go, Johnny Damon? So let's play it, look at it, and then we can talk about what prompted Johnny Damon and you in this song. So Aiden, if we can bring this back up.
Why did you go, Johnny Damon? Why did you take the cash and run? Do you think in New York City you'll be having this much fun? They cut your hair and shaved your beard. You smiled and just said thanks. We don't love you anymore, 'cause now you're with the Yanks. Perhaps they didn't tell you, perhaps you did not know. Left center field.
Okay, there we go. We have some people that went from Boston to New York. Of course, Sparky Lyle was traded, but Louis Tiant went on his own volition. Wade Boggs, his own volition, and of course Johnny Damon. What prompted this, and what do we think about these players going from Boston to the Yankees?
Well, in the case of Johnny Damon, he was very popular and a little bit wacky. He had the long hair and the beard and everything, and he was part of the gang of idiots that helped them win the World Series in 2004 and break the curse. And then 2005, he hit 316. That was his best ever in the major leagues. So he was very much attached to Boston, and then out of his own volition, he decided to go over to the Yankees for a mere $12 million more. I mean, the nerve of that guy. Yeah. So that was an easy one to make a song out of. And I was actually there the first time that he played with the Yankees in Fenway Park, and they booed the hell out of him. And it was kind of interesting. And that song just kind of rolled off. And that's another. I should put in a plug for my baseball show.
Well, tell us about your shows and any shows you're doing, what you're doing, and what's going on there.
I do the baseball. Let me be clear that the baseball music is kind of a minor part of my songwriting and my performing, but I do these specialized baseball shows, which I do baseball songs. I do the Mike Hessman song. I do Johnny Damon. I have a song I wrote about artificial turf. Wait until next year. I've got a song about Tony Cloninger, who was the only pitcher ever to hit 2 grand slams in a game. So I do an hour-long show where I do baseball songs, we do trivia, tell some stories about some of the stuff we've talked about, and interact with the audience. And I've actually got a show coming. My next show is on March 24th, and it's not in Westboro, but it's in Hopkinton, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump. Yeah. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, you should go to my website, which is HowieNewman.com. and go to the area about the baseball shows, and it'll tell you where and when, and you probably want to. It's at the Hopkinton Senior Center, and you definitely want to contact them and see what the how to get in. It's free, but they may be limiting seating because of the pandemic. So, but yeah, I've been doing those for about 6 or 7 years now, and right now I've got about 17 of them booked in the greater Boston area, and it's really a lot of fun to do. I talk about the Dump the DH and some of my experiences as a sports writer, and we do trivia. And like one of my favorite trivia questions is how many seasons did Ted Williams have 200 or more hits? You know?
All the ones that he did. I'm going to guess 200 he hit. Well, of course, he got walked a lot of times, so I'll go with 5.
The answer is 0.
0, I see.
But you were on the right track, definitely on the right track there, because he walked so many times that and also they played in the 154 game schedule at that point. But even the year he hit 406, he only had 185 hits. But so we have a lot of fun with it. It's been very popular, and we usually do it in late March and early April, right around the beginning of the baseball season. So hopefully we will have a baseball season at some point. But I would encourage people to check out the website and see if there's one in your area, if you're from out of the Westboro area. And but the one in Hopkinton would be close by and would be good to go to.
Well, Howie, there will be a baseball season. It may not be Major League, but we'll have Westboro High School playing. We'll have the Woo Sox playing. There will be baseball in spring. We're all cooped up here. We've had enough snow and cold weather. We are ready for baseball.
Yes, I'm definitely ready for it.
And I think we're ready for your show, too. So everybody out there, HowieNewman.com, the show's on baseball, plus other songs that he does. So we want to thank you for coming. And
my pleasure.
hope to see you at one of the shows.
Okay, great. Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this is Paul McGrath saying thanks for watching. And we hope to see you at the game. And if you're not in the game, we hope to see you on the sidelines. Or maybe at Fenway.